Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bridging the Gap. Make sure to leave a like on this video down below and subscribe. My name is Alvin. I lead right on most issues, and I'll be representing the Republican side.
My name is Luke. I lean left on most issues, and I'll be representing the Democratic side. Hey guys, in this video, we're going to be making 2024 election predictions based on the polls. Now, early polling usually isn't that great of an election predictor, especially this far out. We're almost uh, like 10 to 11 months away from the actual election here. But it's still good to see how these will compare to the actual election day and kind of use them to gauge where the race is.
Yeah, of course, you always want to look at as many factors as possible, and we looked at 13 keys, for example, to predict the election. We did our own prediction. Now we're going to look at what the polls are saying. So we'll be using the most up-to-date polls in each state, although sometimes they're still very old. So yeah, where should we start?
I mean, I think we should probably go for some of the more solid, solidly known states here, like maybe like Alaska, just like for example. Yeah.
Yeah, so if we go to Alaska, the polling here is only done by Alaska Survey Research, not really a well-known national polling company, and they do have Donald Trump up here as expected, but you will see that they are only at a likely margin.
Yeah, I mean, Alaska Survey Research, their polling is usually pretty left favored, except I will say they were really accurate in 2022, which I found really interesting. So I believe they predicted Peltola winning both her elections. I'm not sure, maybe not the first one, but yeah, they had that race at least competitive. So I mean, if they are getting more accurate, they could be used as a more accurate tool for 2024. Who knows? But yeah, they put the race around likely. That's where we have it. So. Yeah. hmm
All right, let's go to some other states. I think states like New Mexico we can just hammer out because they're not that interesting. They also have recent polling has Biden up by a likely margin there. Might as well just put it there. And then I guess we can also knock out New Hampshire, Florida. These states are the ones that we didn't particularly put in likely, but this polling in New Hampshire is somewhat surprising.
Yeah, I mean, some of this polling is interesting. Emerson, which has been leaning right lately, has Biden up 5. CNN paired with the University of New Hampshire has him up 12, which is like really massive. And some other well-known pollsters like St. Anselm, which is I was believe was highly rated on 538 before they took away the ratings, is at +9. So I mean, I compared to like how Biden polls in other swingy states, he's doing like fabulously in New Hampshire. So I mean, I don't know, like yeah, the polling seems to suggest this could be a likely even solid race. But yeah.
Yeah, I think likely is good here just because you see the difference in the different polling, and this Southern poll is also quite old, but yeah, I think likely is good there. And then I guess we can finish with some other states that we marked as likely in our prediction, but might suggest differently in the polling.
Yeah, yeah, in recent Virginia polling, it's been pretty close, surprisingly. I mean, there's some I think mainly bouncing between like a lean and likely margin. Yeah, I don't think Virginia will end up being this close. Could just be up to undecideds really, but yeah, like right now the polling suggests a close Virginia. Uh, so that's interesting.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting. And then continue on, like I said, maybe Ohio is good as a good one to look at. Um, you can see here that Trump is almost guaranteed to win the state of Ohio. Most polls have him up by more than 10 here, and it just goes to show how much Trump has been making improving the margins with the white working class in Rust Belt states like Ohio and how much Joe Biden is falling behind. And when you see a candidate getting over 50% in these kinds of states, it pretty much means they've locked down the state.
Yeah, it seems like pretty similar to New Hampshire in the sense that like he's bouncing between likely and solid. with the latest polls, but yeah, that's good enough.
Right. Florida over here, as we saw in 2022, Florida has been going crazy to the right recently in favor of Republicans with big statewide wins all around. And you see this sort of reflected in the recent polling with Trump taking a clear lead ever since we came into 2023.
Yeah, the polling seems pretty self-explanatory here. Again, like he has a 10-point margin in some of the two most recent ones, so I mean that's pretty solid. Um, yeah, like I mean it does seem like Florida is going to be in that likely to solid region again, come 2024. But yeah. Hmm.
All right, where do you want to go next?
Um, maybe yeah, maybe Minnesota. That's probably more blue territory, but
Very limited polling here, but the polling we do have does suggest a close race. I think the undecideds are just gonna easily break to Biden
oh
eventually.
yeah.
But right now I guess it is close with I guess Biden just being very disapproved of in the state.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of undecideds in these polls, like 22% on like other undecided is not that great. It's still really early in the election year, but yeah, this does suggest what you'd expect. Biden is likely leading in Minnesota, yeah.
There we go. Um, and then I guess the final non super swingy state we have is Texas here where the head-to-head polling we're going to use the head-to-head polling because the third party polling is I'm sure their percentages are going to go down, but the head-to-head polling here suggests a pretty favorable environment for Trump. The Republicans have feared for a while that Democrats might continue to make gains in Texas, but it seems like 2024 just isn't going to be their year to flip it. So I think this is as good as you can really hope for as Republican here in 2024. 6 to 8 points is a good lead.
I mean, 6 to 8 points this early out I mean, it's compared to some of the other polling I've seen, I will say the Texas polling isn't as bad as it could be. I mean, I've seen some polls with Nevada at like plus 11. And a lot of these Texas polls have Trump only leading by 5 or 6, which is, I mean, better. Like this is Biden doing essentially better than we see in like Iowa, better than we see in like Ohio polling, better than Florida polling, certainly. So, I mean, polling early out at least suggests a slightly closer race in Texas in that sense. But yeah, it definitely still seems to be in that likely column as of right now.
Likely there in Texas. And then now we have the states that we kind of labeled as the ones that you really need to look out for. But I think we can go to North Carolina, which is the least competitive of the six. Um, go down to the head-to-head polling. You saw coming into 2023, Biden looked competitive in North Carolina, but recently Trump has really been taking the lead, kind of bolstered by the same pollster like over and over here with Bloomberg. But still, overall, you can see that he is doing quite well in the state. And it seems like it's going to be out of reach for Democrats yet another time.
Yeah, and at least in terms of this early polling, yeah, it does seem like, I mean, the Bloomberg polling here suggests it could be likely. It's morning consult, but some of the other polling suggests a lighter shade of red here. Um, yeah, I mean, different polls point to different things, but all of them seem to point to Trump leading right now. So there's that. Which state should we go to next? Maybe Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan. Like we said, these are probably the final six states that really are going to determine the course of the election. But Michigan is maybe the least competitive in favor of Democrats. But in the polling, we have a different story here, with recent polling really favoring Trump. Even though the Michigan Republicans are in shambles, it seems like Biden is just so disapproved that he can't really get any traction here.
Yeah, it does seem like an interesting mix. The Epic A poll and is the one I kind of find the most worrying, because that one was very accurate in 2022, right before the election, and predicting Whitmer's landslide, and Democrats just doing really well there. And the fact Biden's down in those is is quite worrying. Although there is still like, I mean, 13% other undecided is still really massive. I mean, we're still very far away, but um that, I mean, yeah, that is something that I would definitely be worried about as a Democrat. Um, yeah, this is, I mean, most the polling like is very like interesting here. I guess there's some likely like Trump even being favored by 5 or more, but yeah, generally it just seems to lean in favor of him.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think something else that's probably even more worrying for Democrats is the shifts in the polling, right? Because if you only had just Republican polling all the way from 2022 to 2023, you could probably chalk that up to bad polling. Coming off of the 2022 cycle, you saw some pollsters accidentally polling too much Republicans or something like that, and they're biased and not correcting. But if you look at the shifts, it's the same pollsters, right? Polling uh, from from 2022 into 2023. And for example, if you cite the Epic MRA poll that you just talked about in August of 2023, you had Biden winning by 1 point, and now if you look now, Trump's up 5, and the same pollster down here had Biden up 4 all the way back in November of 2022 when you might remember Gretchen Whitmer won another term as governor and destroyed Tudor Dixon. And nowadays you just see the shift, and that's not going to look good for the future for Democrats.
yeah.
All right, now it comes down to the final five that will pretty much decide the election this time around. You can go in any order you want.
I mean, let's just maybe start on the West Coast and slowly work our way east.
Sure. So we'll go to Nevada first.
Nevada's been interesting with its polling lately because in 2022 it was pretty evident it was biased to the right, at least in terms of the Senate race. But yeah, like, and I'm not sure if that will continue to 2024. Pollsters are correcting for that. But yeah, like we see some very large margins for Trump in Nevada in some of these polls. I mean, what I found pretty crazy is the New York Times poll had Trump up 11 in Nevada, a margin he's almost certainly not going to get in this state. But I definitely think he could win it by. He could definitely win the state, but by that much, I think is extremely unlikely. Um, but yeah, I mean, we see yeah, the latest polls here, like the morning consult polls, Emerson and New York Times, Emerson and New York Times being the most notable two there, have him leading Nevada by pretty large margins. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely have this like based on the polling alone, I would think this is like a likely state if I was just looking at polling this far out, in favor of Trump. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think about these shifts in the polling, right, from places like Morning Consult?
I mean, morning consults polling is not the best. Uh, I usually pay attention to better pollsters like Emerson and New York Times. Um, but yeah, I do find it weird how the polls were like, I mean, if you go down to 2022, they're all like super red, and then there's a slight like blue shift after that, immediately after the midterms, and then they're back to being extremely red. I wonder why that is, because normally you'd see a more consistent shift. I mean, like in Michigan, it was a pretty consistent blue to red shift, but now like we see like a weird spike with Nevada here. Yeah, I don't know. Could just be bolsters being wonky in the state. Maybe they tried to correct. Maybe they did make corrections after 2022, and in 2023 they with their new polling methods it did shift. But yeah, I don't know. The latest polls, however, like just looking at the latest polls, it definitely favors Trump.
Yeah, I think that does make some sense, right? Because you see, like immediately after the 2022 elections, maybe these pollsters thought, they didn't predict Nevada perfectly, so they had to move it back to the left. Now their new methods are still putting Trump up. But either way, it is a worrying sign for Democrats in the state. They do need to improve in a state like Nevada that they really need to win because every electoral vote is really adding up. So
Yeah.
this will go over to Arizona here, where we have another one of these shifts, right? Like after the 2022 midterms, you see these polls coming to the left. I mean, it is kind of
Oh yeah,
that
it's a lot of the
selection
same.
with the same pollster here, but you still see like a change from red to blue, and then now we're back over to every single poll except for a Democrat internal poll putting Republicans up.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty telling that with all these with all the red on the screen that Trump is leading the polls in Arizona right now. And then yeah, again, you could look at the Emerson and New York Times polls here. In the New York Times, he's leading by 5 among registered voters, and Emerson he's leading by 2. Um, yeah, I mean, I think like it still indicates it's going to be a close race, but yeah, he's definitely leading right now in terms of those polls. Uh, yeah. Next, we're
Yeah,
going to Wisconsin, I guess.
I do think my gut tells me that Biden's still somehow gonna find a way to win Arizona right now, but yeah, I guess the polls say differently. So I guess we'll move to Wisconsin here, which is sort of interesting. I think Wisconsin polling might be the worst of all time in terms of presidential races over the past few years, right? Like you always
Yeah.
see Wisconsin having abysmal polling. And I think it's sort of telling here. Like, for example, you saw the New York Times poll where they polled every swing state as we've been going through, and they always put Trump up in every other state, but they put Wisconsin at even. And this sort of reminds me of 2020 when they put Biden up by double digits in the state and he barely won it
Hmm.
by by under 1%. And so if even New York Times doing that, that's really like not good for Biden. I think although the polling has been getting less Democrat favored over the 2022 midterms, this still shows a much better path for Trump compared to years past.
Yeah. I mean, you're definitely right. In 2016, 2020, polling was really biased to the left in Wisconsin, extremely so. But in 2022, I will say, like they got it pretty accurately. Like mainstream pollers like the New York Times got Wisconsin almost like dead spot on, in terms of the governor and Senate polling. Um, so I mean, maybe that early, like it might even be that early polling in 2022 is probably the most accurate, like with Biden leading the state barely. I'm not sure if methodologies have changed. Maybe they stuck with the same thing. But yeah, right now, I mean, it's still close, but it seems like with the mainstream pollsters, Biden's still ahead. I mean, with Marquette, he's up 2. With New York Times, he's up 2. Emerson, he's even. And then the one Bloomberg poll seems to suggest that he's down. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, we could.
I would even say, yeah, like it was like it seems like Biden might be up in Wisconsin in terms of the polling. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe in 2024 we'll see the same thing we saw in 2016 and 2020 with the polling being super far off, but it seems like Biden's leading Wisconsin like barely.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin polling is just really bad. You do see the recent polling with Trump up, but I
That's
guess the
just morning
mainstream,
consult though. It's like one
yeah,
poll.
yeah, you're right. We can put was should we put it lean D?
Yeah, I'd say yeah, lean or tilt blue. I mean, it seems like every other it's contrary to most other swing states in terms of the polling.
When
And
did
then,
I
oh yeah, you
no, when
accidentally
did I do
switched to
that?
Michigan.
Okay.
Michigan was lean. Yeah, lean red.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But yeah. Okay. Next, maybe Georgia.
Georgia. Georgia, my least favorite state when it comes to elections. It's quite annoying. But yeah, this is kind of crazy, right? This amount of red here.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's again another one of those states where it's pretty evident Trump is ahead. Mainstream pollsters are putting him like looks like in a even a likely margin ahead. I mean, New York Times has him up 6. Emerson has him up 7. Um, like CNN, which was somewhat accurate in 2022, also has him up 5. I mean, I could even see this like us putting this in likely just based on the polls here. And again, like if you're looking at way earlier polls back in 2022, it seems like there was like, I mean, the Republican bias in that year might have led pollsters to change methods to into early 2023. So that's why we might have seen the blue shift. But yeah, like as Trump has been rising in the polls recently, it's pretty evident in Georgia he's leading, at least as of right now.
Yep, I guess we'll just have to put it in likely. It is pretty crazy how he's leading by this much right now. And I think this is also what's affecting the projections that some of these mainstream sites like CNN is doing, right? Like they're putting Georgia lean Republican, they're putting Michigan till or lean Republican, which is maybe a little too much, but that is their
Yeah.
projection. So, all right, let's move
Okay.
on to Pennsylvania.
Yep. Uh, okay. This is interesting. Pennsylvania. I mean, okay, there seems to be like more of a mix compared to other states. Again, more mainstream pollsters seem to be favoring Republicans here, with Emerson and New York Times uh putting him 4 points ahead. Uh but yeah, I mean like some polls that were decent in 2022, Franklin and Marshall College, Muhlenberg College, which are I believe Pennsylvania specific pollsters, have Biden still up slightly. Uh yeah, I mean this is interesting. And Quinnipiac did one in September, October with Trump up too. Yeah, this one does seem like slightly more of a mix compared to what we've been seeing in other pollsters. Well, I mean, with other states, I mean, I still think it favors Trump based on polls alone. Um, that would probably tilt in his favor. But yeah, I mean, of course, it's still early, still plenty of undecideds. Things can change. But yeah, I think in terms of the horse race and looking at polling alone, Trump is ahead.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
don't think he's ahead by that much, but he is definitely ahead here in terms of the
mhm.
polling. Just overall, I don't think there's too many insights to gain, but it is a really good thing that we should be looking at. And I don't think this can possibly be the map in 2024, right? Like you can't have Wisconsin going blue while Michigan is lean Republican and Georgia's that Republican as well.
Yeah,
But it is still a good thing to look at because you know that there's polling bias, but you want to take a holistic review. That's a college term, a holistic review of everything when you really evaluate races. And it's a good thing for us to look at
yeah.
doing our predictions.
I mean, I doubt like polling should not really be taken too seriously until we get into later in the race, but it is something you should definitely be taking into account, especially with Biden declining in the polls as of recent.
Yeah,
Um,
trends.
yeah, like in terms of trends, like looking at that and taking into account states, like the trends of states in general as well, like and where they've been moving, how elections have actually been going as opposed to polls, in terms of special elections, the 2023 elections, taking those into account, like that's how we reach our blue like our actual predictions, and we encourage you guys to look at our actual predictions. They're in a video from around a week ago, a few days ago. We made one at the beginning of January. But yeah, in terms of polls alone though, it is pretty evident that Trump is ahead in that sense as of right now.
There we go. So I don't think there's that much more to say. Pretty surface level video here, giving good insights in terms of the polls. But yeah, thanks for watching. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, share the video, and see you in the next one.
Yeah,
Bye.
see ya.